and pulling it all the way to the end.
I thought you were going to say we're going to find out for an analyst who's going to win. Who knows? But you know what? We had expected it. We should have expected it. A game 5 in this series. And I like to go on what the Fisio said. You don't have to pick anything out of the ordinary when you can pick something that makes such great team fights and you play them so perfectly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the Unicorns did. They pulled out the greatest cheese that they could have possibly pulled out. To quote a very famous StarCraft caster, sometimes if you go the standard way, that's the greatest cheese. So no one expected the Unicorns to go standard. They picked it. They picked meta champions. They picked a composition that made just sense for our own team fight, objective control. They played it out perfect, nothing at all, nothing out of the ordinary, just standard picks, standard performance, and they beat Fnatic. It was just
standard
incredible.
game 5.
Yeah, and it worked really well together. Like, they played it really well as a team. I was keeping track of the kill participation. The last team fight, I wasn't able to check out the numbers, but for almost the entire game, it was 90% plus for the entire team. Everyone was contributing to all of the kills. There was no standout individual performance. It was just Unicorns of Love stepping up and playing great. They moved around the map well. They gave very little to Fnatic. They had very few kills at the end of the game, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, you do mention it was an individual skill that mattered, but I feel like if you're going to pick a comp where you have to hit those team fights perfectly, you do have a lot of trust in yourself and your individual capabilities, especially going into a game where you could possibly be eliminated from the playoffs.
Especially after the games they had before.
Yeah.
Game 2 and 3, they were, for the Unicorns, horrible. They tried some stuff out, something that they tried before, and it failed. So the mentality that they go into this game has to be, oh guys, if we lose this game, we're out, the season is over. What do we do now? And then you have to have the nerves to pull out the standard composition and win the whole thing. Vivichachi is a player I want to point out especially. He played Irelia, he got camped like crazy. He fell out 0-5, 0-6, gave up like 10 kills in that game. And now he pulls off a perfect Maokai performance just out of nowhere. You have to have those nerves to play a 5-game series.
Yeah, and in the elimination game, like you were saying, some coaches and some players like to suggest that when your backs are against the wall, you play something that's hard to mess up. They played Sejuani, Orianna, Thresh. Very skill shot dependent. You're in that high pressure moment, and they were hitting everything. That was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, just ask Smithy. You can miss those Sejuani ults, but Kiki's didn't. Let's pull a replay up on the screen where, as you said, they just made everything happen and they did it perfectly. And when you have a combo like that, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, so they're in here on the mid siege on the first tier tower, and they're grouped up, and Fnatic is not in the right position. So if we can run this replay here, they're just trying to break down this tower. They're pushing up to make sure they can get to the zone, and Gregas has no E, he has no more mobility left. They land the hook, kite back on Huni, and here comes the Glacial Prison into the Shockwave. Just so beautiful, does so much damage, locks up the team with the CC. They have no time to respond, and Fnatic just has to get out of here. But it's going to be too late. The run down onto Huni, and just the teamwork and everything that UOL is doing here is just so good. I just love watching this.
Oh, it's a sight for sore eyes on that hit.
Yeah, up until this point, the game was totally open, and then they suddenly decided to siege the mid lane turret. And if I, as a coach, had to paint a mid lane siege with that composition, that's how it looked like.
Exactly,
it was
like
just
that.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was beautiful indeed, and Power of Evil now on the Orianna, something again that was a little bit more scaling. You wanted to extend on that a little bit because he hit a lot of shockwaves this time around, and it was really nice to see.
He missed like 1 out of 15 or something. That was just an amazing. I didn't count either. It was just like a close to perfect performance on that Orianna. And that's one thing that we really have to point out. Power of Evil is a known assassin player. He's known for playing Syndra. He's known for playing LeBlanc. He's known for playing Ahri.
Not lately, though.
Not lately, though, and that's the point I want to point out here. Because suddenly you have to think about the possibility to ban out those late-game damage control champions for him. He's not only banned on the Syndra, but now you have to take into consideration if you ban the Orianna or the Kog'Maw, something that we haven't seen today and he can pull out any day.
Yeah, he has shown the flexibility going on throughout the playoffs and towards the later end of the season that he's able to play the champions that his team asks him to play, and he is an experienced Orianna player. He has many games of solo queue played in Orianna, and it shows. He's able to bring Orianna into his team play, into the LCS finals, and put on an amazing performance.
Yeah, and you should usually argue when you know that the player has such a big champion pool, it's not worth banning out. Fnatic sticking with their same 3 bans, Cassiopeia, Morgana, and Annie throughout the entire series. Do you need an adaptation from them there, or is that not worth it?
Absolutely. Like the top lane Smite Shyvana was something that hasn't worked out. I believe that Huni is not the player to pull out that composition. It has to work. Like I said it in the semifinals, they have to have some scrim results where it worked out perfectly for them, so they still stick to it. But in this case, it just didn't work. He got bullied around by a Maokai in lane, and that's something that should not happen in this situation if you want to make an impact on the game. And once they were grouped up, Shyvana had no impact on the teamfight as well, because he was just ulting into a shockwave, and that's something that you don't want to do, no matter what you do. The Hecarim works for him, the Rumble works for him.
That was open here.
The Vladimir works for him.
Yep.
Why do you pick the Shyvana top lane with this Smite tactic? I don't see the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, I want to see him return to more of those styles of champions. That fits Huni's play style a bit better. And yeah, if I think maybe Fnatic looking at the next game, I think they should move away from the Shyvana.
Yeah, we'll see what they decide to go with, giving Huni the pointers to maybe go on that Vlad, go on the Hecarim. Let's kind of look to a couple of other lanes, because we talk so much about Power of Evil and Huni in the top lane, and Reignover as a jungler. He is so central to that, but here, he wasn't able to put it down. I do feel like he could still be the absolute key in the next game, get those pressure down on the right lanes, because that's also what got them rolling before.
Reignover was the key element of the Fnatic wins in game 2 and 3. He was the one putting on that early pressure and just controlling the vision control, controlling the pace of the game, setting up his lanes and bringing them ahead, which ultimately led to the Fnatic team winning those team fights. In this game, he wasn't able to have such a big impact, because you have those lanes who are fairly hard to gank. So if you pick a Maokai top lane with a Shyvana, you have no follow-ups you see in the lane itself, so you can't gank it that easy. He tried to gank a couple of times, and Maokai just walked out. That's something maybe you have to adapt. Like maybe try to focus the mid lane, maybe try to focus the bot lane, make some bot lane plays.
Febiven, last week's MVP, try and get him ahead maybe.
Yeah, and the jungler is generally the one that influences the most in the early game. It's your jungler that's going to put you ahead. Usually your jungler also going to, or the enemy jungler is going to put your team behind as well. And even though Reignover is known as a strong carry early game jungler, he just wasn't able to make it connect this game. And when they moved into the mid game or the early mid game, it was the teamwork out of UOL that was able to surpass the teamwork of Fnatic.
Yeah, just too crisp of a team play out of UOL, but Fnatic not out of this one yet by any means. I'm not going to ask you to predict anything. We're just going to see. It's all coming down to game 5 to decide who walks away as the Spring Split champion. Don't touch that browser. We'll be right back.
Descendants connects, tower does go down. Huni does not actually get caught by the flame. Looking for the shockwave. That's a prison into shockwave. 3 members of Fnatic lose their HP bomb.
Nice. Nice. Go down.
We can push. Exactly what we got there, boys. Chachi catches Febiven. Shockwave goes up, pulling Huni back, but this could be the game-winning fight, and set their sights onto the Nexus turret. 0-0-15. James Bond 007 ain't half as good as Hillisang. And the Unicorns of Lab take us to game 5.